Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 8th meeting of the Richmond Selectboard. We're starting a little early tonight. This is going to be primarily a budget meeting, but first we have one agenda item. Is there any public comment?
Saw Chris Granda's here. He might.
Chris, do you happen to have a public comment?
There, managed to unmute myself. No, I don't. I'm mostly here out of curiosity. I have not had a chance to pay as close attention to the budget process this year as I like to. I did want to say thank you to all of you for, I know it was a difficult process, but don't let me slow things down.
You say was, as in that implying that it's over.
Well,
Thank you, Chris.
good point. Good point. I mean, I hope that we're getting to the final stages.
I think we all do. Any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Okay, on to the main agenda. Our first item is a discussion of the Greystone 3-acre stormwater permit, and then we have an possible executive session that will come along with that. Do we want to start with the executive session, Josh?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's much to talk about
publicly,
in public. And Chris, the likely be in the executive session until, well, the plan I think would be to restart the meeting, not even restart, but not start the budget portion until 7 o'clock. So if you wanted to go have dinner and then log back in at 7, you won't miss anything on the budget.
Sounds good.
Mr. Chair, this is David. I move to find that premature public knowledge about confidential attorney-client communications regarding the Greystone 3-acre permit would cause the town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage.
This is Bart. I second that.
A motion and a second. What is your vote?
Bart, I.
David, aye.
Adam, aye.
Mr. Chair, this is David. I move that we enter into executive session to discuss attorney-client communications regarding the Greystone 3-acre permit under the provisions of 1 VSA 313A1F of the Vermont statutes, and to invite town manager Josh Arneson and town attorney David Rue into the executive session.
This is Bart. I'll second.
A motion and a second. We have vote.
Bart, I.
David, aye.
Adam, aye. You're going into executive session, everyone.
Where are we going?
See you in a few.
Let's go across the hall, I think. All right, it's 7 o'clock.
Ready to go.
We're gonna move on to the budget draft.
Hey, everyone, welcome back to our December 8th meeting. We have already started the meeting, so we are just going to continue with the budget presentation. I guess before we continue, because a lot of people here missed the initial introduction, we're going to redo our public comment portion. Anyone have any public comment? Anyone have any additions, changes, or deletions to the one remaining item on the agenda? Okay, back to the agenda. So we're going to go, it's our third budget meeting. Okay. Go over changes and stuff.
Sure. All right, so at the last meeting, I thought we made a lot of good progress with the budget, with using a lot of the unassigned funds to go towards reserve funds for both this year and next year. Let me hit a couple of the highlights of what we did at the last meeting, and then I think what we'll do is maybe start with the capital plan. So at the last meeting, the decision was made to budget for 3.5 police officers rather than a full 4. Reduce the contribution to the Bridge and Culvert Reserve from 50,000 to 50,000. It was at 95,000 in the last version, and reduce the Wilson Community Justice allocation to 0. This got us to a pretty close to 0 tax rate increase from FY26 to FY27. I think I'm going to start with the capital plan because some of the changes we made there really affect what we're talking about tonight. So let me share my screen. Fine. Okay. Sharing now, okay. Okay.
Can you enlarge it?
Yeah, let me make that a little bigger for you. All right. So at the last meeting, we presented a budget which utilized unassigned funds to overfund reserves this year with the goal of reducing what we need to pay in taxes for future years. So that is shown here with a little. Yeah. So this is a summary page. This shows total taxes required for all of the reserve funds to which tax dollars go into. So this is police reserve, library reserve, fire safety equipment reserve, the fire reserve, highway capital, bridge and culvert reserve, guardrails, and then we have some infrastructure ones that we haven't funded for a while. The current value of what we're putting in on taxes in FY27 is at $670,000. In October, we were looking at about $885,000 in taxes going into these reserves. We were able to reduce that by $215,000 through using unassigned funds that we projected we'll have on hand by the end of FY26, mostly based on reimbursements from the FEMA storm last summer. In October, when we looked at the budget, we were looking at about $752,000 in FY28 in taxes going into reserves by sort of overfunding the reserves this year. October was 862. We're at 752 currently. So that's a reduction of $110,000 from the previous version of the capital plan. That reduction extends out to FY29 of 45,000 and 25,000 in FY30. And again, this is a reduction from where we were in October when we weren't using any unassigned or restricted funds to go into funding the capital reserves. So maybe I'll stop there to see if anybody has any questions about capital reserves and what we're doing with the unassigned and restricted funds in the capital plan.
Were there any additional updates on the FEMA money or anything, or is that coming later? I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
There really haven't been any additional updates. I think Duncan got feedback from FEMA that there's 2 more projects that are pretty close to closing out, but they've yet to send the final paperwork on that. But they're several $100,000, if I recall correctly. So we're continuing to move forward on those. We just don't have any firm obligations just yet, other than what we discussed at the last meeting in November. Jack has his hand.
Oh, Jack, go ahead.
Ask what happened to all the excess money in the last 4 fiscal years that we budgeted for police that didn't go to police?
Same thing that's happening this year.
What's that?
Same thing that's happening this year. We're using it to buy down the budget for the next year.
So it didn't go towards police?
No. We've chronically over budgeted police or underspent, I guess,
Yes,
depending on which you want to look at it. I think every year we're optimistic we're going to hire more police, and then we never have.
Which is not a surprise.
Not surprised. It's tough to hire police officers right now.
I agree.
Um,
I put something on Front Porch Forum, and I couldn't believe the number of people who came back and agreed with me. Is that we have 5 towns in a village in Chittenden East, and we're the only one of the towns that has a police force. The only one. We're not the richest. We're not the poorest. We don't have the most commercial. The only thing we have that's different is the highway. And it's 45 years, so it's not. I just don't understand why Richmond requires the police that we have. And I'm not alone, but a few minutes ago, I was 100% of the people that were, they all agreed with me that was in here. Nobody was in here.
Only observe for better or worse, Jack, that when this motion was made at town meeting, what was it, 5 years ago?
45 years ago was the first time. Yeah.
The motion to eliminate the police department failed at the town meeting by, if I recall correctly, a pretty sizable margin. To be fair, that's not all of the voters in town. That's the voters in town who show up for town meeting.
All right. Move on to budget.
sure.
So I'll review changes that we've made since the last meeting. All changes that were made at the last meeting, we included in the budget. At this time, we don't have updated rates for town insurance, so our property and casualty insurance. So we increased all those lines by 5% to account for a likely increase in calendar years 2026 and 2027, both of which will affect FY27. We put an estimate in here on the county tax of about $30,000. We've been keeping that flat to last year, but it was closer to 30,000 in FY25, so we'll keep it at 30,000 for FY27. Fire department, there's going to be an increase in the per call for dispatch. Scroll down to fire. So we increased that to $9,000. That we budgeted at $5,600 in 26, and looking at what they're projecting for per call cost and the number of calls that we get, $9,000 should probably cover us. We added a $250 line for pickleball supplies. After talking with the Friends of the Pickleball Committee, they wanted a little bit of money to kind of replace a net and a couple other small things each year. So we put $250 in for that. We did remove the 4th of July fireworks based on a discussion at the last budget meeting, which was to remove that $15,000. We might want to dive into that a little bit more at this budget meeting. I know there's been some requests from the parade committee at the last meeting, so we could look into that a little bit more, but this is where our baseline is for tonight. We increased the Howard Center community outreach funding. I think we had it closer to $9,000 or $10,000. Last year we were budgeting for $12,500. The actuals of it went down in FY26 due to some differences with the contract and the way things got reshuffled in 26. We're looking at a new 3-year contract starting in FY27. Negotiations are just starting to happen for that. They gave us a range of possible contributions, and it looked like we'd be closer to around $17,000, give or take on that. And there's still a lot more conversation about service and reporting on community outreach, but it has been something that when we have enough officers, it's worked well to help address some needs in Richmond. We also looked at a plan to, no, we just lost the projector. The Zoom is still working. We just lost the projector in the room. So let me try to restart this, and then we'll get into the reserve funds. But one of the things we looked at, Connie and I, was what if we took the reserve money and put that into CDs for FY27, or put some of it into CDs, keeping enough back for cash flow, and then use that interest to directly fund reserves, put it back in reserves to reduce we have to put into FY28, with part of this idea being that we are always going to have a larger contribution to reserves every year. And if we can try to fund them a little bit ahead of time, that'll reduce what we have to add in for taxes in the FY28 version of the budget. And I'll show you a chart here as soon as I can get the.
This is half a joke, but half serious. Can we add in for a new projector?
I was thinking the same thing.
I know we tried to use the one from the other room, and it's too blurry, so we just need to buy a new projector. We'll try to do that maybe over the holidays.
Okay, great.
It is frustrating. It's starting to come back up here. Apologize to those online for the delay. There we go. Okay, so what we looked at was these 5 different reserve funds, taking 100,000 from police capital, 180,000 from fire equipment, 500,000 from highway capital, 500,000 for bridge and culvert, 25,000 from guardrail, for a total of about $1.3 million. Projecting out a 6-month CD for 3.5 interest should be about $22,000. If we did that twice, or 12-month CDs, we should be about $45,000. And that money would again go directly back into those reserve funds to reduce what we have to pay in future years. So if you go back to the capital plan, this number here of 752 would then come down closer to $700,000, depending on how those CDs performed, which would help us in future budget years.
We would actually put them in separate CDs,
So we could keep
Right.
track.
so we'd know what interest went with each, and the
Um,
upside to that is now the banks are pretty much letting you go month to month without penalty. So you can do a 3-month CD, but if you need that cash after 1 month, there won't be a penalty. You'll keep what you've earned.
So what we did then on the revenue side was this used to be $75,000. So we reduced that by 25,000, knowing we'd still have some money, as we collect more money for school taxes before we have to pay those. We're still going to have money in the general account earning general interest, but not as much as we had initially budgeted for, knowing we're going to put some into CDs. So that does reduce our revenue a little bit. But overall, not too terribly much.
Net positive.
Net positive, I think, yeah. Then we made some adjustments in the use of unassigned funds and restricted funds based on some of the changes to the budget. We also changed the grand list value. We talked to our assessor to ask what she projected for estimated grand list value that we'll set the tax rate on. So that increased from about 8,027,000 to 8,034,000. And then all these changes all together end up leaving us with a 0.44% increase over the prior year in the budget. So you can see that a little bit better.
So if we
There you go.
spend all the money in this budget, what does our tax rate look like next year to do the same thing again? Because every year we bought this down,
Mhm.
and every year we assume we put a budget in place that we want to spend, right? We want to get these services and do these projects and have these people employed, et cetera. If we do that, we no longer have any money to buy the budget down. So what does that look like next year?
Well, another way to think about it is how much are we
What do we buy? Yeah.
pushing into the next year for a buy down? What's the financial value?
So maybe a quick way
Like
to.
if we were to actually fund this whole budget with money we had to raise this year,
Mhm.
what would that look like? Because we didn't really, not giving you guys crap because we're here for this meeting, we didn't reduce the budget at all.
Right?
We just
The
came back into
expenses.
FEMA. We finagled our revenue and we counted on getting some FEMA money and we are funding reserves. I love funding reserves and planning ahead. That's great, but we haven't reduced the money out at all, really.
I mean, a little bit.
A little bit. I mean, there has
reductions
been
in police and a
some
few
decent
lines,
decent
but not by
significant
a
changes.
lot. So I think
The majority of the changes have been on the
Revenue
on the
side.
revenue side and kind of that part.
So this wouldn't get us everything, but I think to Bart's point, if we reduced what we're contributing for general unassigned funds in the budget and what we're contributing from restricted funds, if we reduce these two to zero, that would take away a good
Yeah.
amount of what we're contributing.
Ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, because there is some money in the contributions to the reserve funds too. Actually, I guess let's not maybe mess with reserve funds yet, because we would probably maybe contribute less to reserves. We didn't have as much coming in because part of this is we're paying a little bit forward. But if we reduce this to
Seem to be
zero,
caught in a spot though where historically every time we buy something from a reserve, it costs, we count on things inflating, but the inflation seems to be happening exponentially faster. So if we add an extra 10%, it costs an extra 20.
Mhm.
So if I take out
If I take those two out,
all the unassigned, I come up with 21.01 increase.
how come I'm getting an 11.42% increase?
Well, you gotta zero out all the
Oh, you
unassigned.
zeroed out the contribution to reserve funds as well.
Correct.
Can we?
Because those,
I-
the dollars that are on
Yeah,
that
so ballpark.
page.
Yeah, like we're talking, depending on how we want to look at it, we're talking like neighborhood of 10 to 20, depending on if we look at reserves as an expense or an investment, all that. So next year, depending on how we're looking at it, we'd be like ballpark before any inflation or anything, 11%.
Plus, you need more reserve. The reserve contributions will go up another. They'll go from 752 to 827 next year.
So
Well,
2002.
they'll go from 670 to 752.
Well, right now I'm showing 752 for
You're
fiscal
looking-
year 28.
Yeah,
752,000 for fiscal year 29,
but we're
827.
budgeting right now for 670 for 27. He's talking about the 28 year, which would be the 7.
Oh, okay, sorry, I got you.
It's still going up by $80,000, but hopefully we'll buy some of that down with investments and reserves. But yeah, I think your ballpark is 10-20%. Depending on how we fund reserves next year.
And just think about what's driving some of that
Yeah.
is inflation, wages, cost of purchasing. It's not lost on any of us that health insurance is a driver in a lot of organizations like schools and the
It
town.
seems like we have a many-year record, which is good. We've had surpluses, but like our budget has not, our tax rate has not reflected our budget or vice versa for a bunch of years now. And at some point, we're going to have to, we're going to either spend the money and we're going to have to reconcile those things, or something's going to happen, right? I mean, just like with Matt, we came up with a plan to hire more police officers, and this time I think the plan actually has a chance of working.
It has generated a lot of interest.
Yeah.
We've had applications coming in. I did an interview today.
Which is great from a police recruitment standpoint. Is awesome. From a budgeting standpoint, I mean, it means that we will likely not have money to buy down the budget because of police understaffing. So,
Which do you want?
no, I guess I don't necessarily have an opinion at this second, but I mean, it strikes me, I was planning on running for another term, and so I will be dealing with this next year, and I don't like kicking the can down the road. I don't know how we don't, because we do have a policy on, what we would carry over for cash and all that stuff. So, I mean, we are, I think by policy obligated to take this money and do something with it, which is reasonable. It just seems like, we kind of, if we do this, we could start having our budget meetings immediately after we put this, like in the spring, because we know we're going to have a problem. If recruitment takes off in the next 3 months, like, I don't know. I think you all understand my concern. I don't have a solution, and I don't think that it's a bad budget, but
And we happen to be talking about police right now. But we could also talk about like buildings.
yeah,
There is one perspective would be also we have years of deferred maintenance on this building, which will catch up with us at some point. And that's like shadow costs avoided. I'm not going to use savings because it's not money in the bank, but it's costs that we avoided incurring. And so we avoided costs on this building. We avoided costs of hiring policemen or paying policemen because we couldn't hire enough. So in that case, it's actually cash because we appropriated or collected it. But this building, we're going to face a significant cost increase. We haven't budgeted anything
kind of
for
the
it.
opposite problem. There,
Yeah.
we're funding it, we're not spending it. Here, we're just not funding it, and the bill's still going to come due. I mean, the bricks are literally falling out right now when you walk in the door. So, anyone have any solutions?
I do.
What's your solution to me?
When we came in the first budget meeting, we set an amount not to exceed. So when we came back to the second budget meeting, I had built my capital plan around that. How can we structure the budget to ease the next several years? These are capital investments, specific purchases, specific years, got to come up with the money the same way. By contributing more from unassigned funds this year, you're leveling off your next 5 years. Our next 5 years are the most painful. And then we get over that hump of where our loans are all gone. We're in a nice steady pace. And then when you get into that steady pace, then you're not going to see the increase for reserves and equipment purchases, whether it be a fire truck or a dump truck.
Sure.
But then at the last meeting, it was decided, well, no, let's chop these amounts we were going to put into the reserves, and here we are again. And yes, out until fiscal year 31, fiscal year 31 will be $877,000. Then we drop down into the 700 range, and then it kind of lives in the 700 range out for the next 10 years. So as your finance person, seeing back-to-back floods, we can't have rainy day funds. This cash is gaining interest and is available to us when we have that crisis.
Or-
And you said something that I don't think we want to miss or overlook, that we're in this transition phase where we're both paying loans for a long time, purchases. We didn't save money. We just bought something on credit, right? So we're paying the loans back. And then we're also trying to get out of high loans by putting stuff into reserve. So arguably, to your point, we're in the most difficult phase where we're both paying off loans and collecting money to avoid future loans. Or reduce the value of future loans is how I think about it.
And part of that is why I really like the idea of the CDs too, because it'll be that much less tax. I mean, we're doing our best in the capital plan to predict what will the increase be.
Yeah, we won't really know until.
Right? How much is a fire truck gonna be 5 years from now? Most of our purchases, I would say the fire truck and right now the Southview Bridge are our big ones that fall outside of the 5-year range. But when you look at that summary page, you can see they're all going up and down different years. They're all for purchases within the next 5 years. Short-term loans just aren't a great idea. I mean, I'd rather receive interest than pay interest. But mainly after the last flood, close to $2.5 million, our 15% that we're keeping in unassigned funds does not cover that.
So I'm just looking at I guess on the budget PDF of what we have for debt right now, and the only thing I see us actually paying on is highway stuff, right? So
Yeah, our short-term loans I think we maybe only have one left. But we still have Jericho Road out there, Millet out
so we're
there.
only spending about 60 grand a year on principal interest on all of our debt.
Yeah, those were through the bond bank.
Yeah. So like we're not
Talking dump trucks and stuff.
we're not like there's not going to all of a sudden be hundreds of thousands of dollars a year freed up in debt payments that we're going to put into reserves.
No, that happened the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Those are all
Kind of over the hump already.
for the short term, yeah. But for the long term, I mean, we still have quite a few years of that going out. When I ran a calculation going back 15 years, we spent $1 million in interest on loans.
Can you show us all the loan payments, whether bond bank or something else, that we're currently?
Yeah, Josh, do
Okay.
you?
Yeah, I guess I don't. This is the only ones I see are the fire, but there could be all kinds of stuff.
The one of the tabs.
For
It says
financials,
15-year on it.
financials that we did? Or
Nope.
for the,
No, right on the budget Excel spreadsheet that I send you, there's a tab that I have that shows 15-year interest. It's the last tab.
let me see.
And I didn't update it this year, but I have in past years.
You sent that to me?
It's part of my whole budget thing that I send you.
Let me see if I can find that. I don't have that super handy. Wait a sec. Do you have it? I can let you share a screen if that's easier.
Almost time for a projector shutdown again too.
Once a night. We're still in the once.
Got it out of the way early.
I think so. I hope so.
Okay, where do I go? Oh, yeah, I forget. I'm going through this session. So how do I'm remoted into my computer. So how do I share that?
Oh, is it on your screen?
Yeah.
Then just share screen. No,
I don't have a place.
you're not logged into Zoom, are you?
No.
Okay, I don't know that I kept.
What if you remote into her computer that's remoted in and then
It's the very last tab in the budget spreadsheet.
The one that you would have sent me prior to this meeting? Because I'm not.
I think you usually take it off to make it smaller.
I guess I did. Let me find your email. Maybe I can find it there. Yeah, I don't
Do you want me to resend it to you?
Sure, if you can do that, because I don't see it on the version you sent me.
Okay.
But if you resend it to me right now, I should be able to just open it right up.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, all I gotta do is find it. Okay.
While we're looking for this, do we want to talk about any of the other things? The one that
fireworks is
comes to
one we
mind
gotta-
is fireworks.
Yeah,
Connie,
good point.
well,
Now I can't see
I was
it.
gonna say,
Yeah, while we're waiting for Josh
How
and
is this
Connie-
on?
While we're waiting for Josh and Connie to pull this up, one thing that came up at our last select board meeting was discussion about how and for how much we would fund the fireworks. And I guess the option, what are the options were to fully fund the fireworks through the budget, fully fund the fireworks on the ballot, or to partially fund the fireworks
In the budget.
in the budget or in the ballot. And I think the numbers would have fully funded would have been approximately $22,000 this year. And the partial amount
That's
that was
weird.
discussed was about 15,000, and the remainder to be made up from the the fireworks reserve, the 4th of July reserve, right? So I don't know.
And there's also the donations or, coin drop, whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
The reserve is kind of funded by their coin drop, right? So
So
Where's
argue.
it going to bring on?
I can't find it now
said
either.
they expect about three or $4,000 ballpark, depending on weather. I think last year was pretty bad turnout.
Fireworks is 20,000.
Yeah,
22.
and so the amount that they expect to bring in with their coin drops this year. So the amount, yeah, sorry, Jack. The amount they expect to bring in with the coin drops this year was about 7,000, and that was why that 15,000 versus 22,000 difference came up, because they expect to be able to contribute about 7,000.
That's the only,
And that's the only
Source.
real source of revenue we have aside from funding it through taxes. So what do we think? I honestly haven't thought about it. I don't have a strong opinion.
I was leaning to the hybrid option, partially funding it.
And I think that using the coin drop money to partially fund the fireworks is worthwhile.
So just to be clear, David, so partially funding it, then the expectation is the committee will fundraise the balance.
Yep. And the path they expect to do that through is coin drops, I think, right? That seems to be
Their
my
primary.
assumption based on what they've said.
Plus they have some money on hand already, right?
Yeah, I think my understanding was they have about $7,600 on
Yeah.
hand, but it would take them a few grand to put on the celebration outside of fireworks. So basically we would count on draining their reserve, and then any money from coin drops this year would be used for the actual festivities.
So right now they have $8,687 in their account. They figure they can raise about $3,000 in coin drops and probably other fundraisers, which would give them 4,687 for expenses after using 7,000 to go towards fireworks. And I think, what do they spend, Connie, each year? $2,000 or $3,000 on expenses for like prizes.
Good prizes and
They
everything.
had said about 2,800 last year and like 2,700 the year before.
Yeah,
So 3,000.
something about that. Yeah. So, I mean, assuming even if they don't raise a full $3,000, I think they'd still have 7,000 to go towards fireworks from that account.
So that $7,000 amount is that's a safe bet.
I think it's fairly safe. I thought I saw Sue on the call. Yeah, she is there. So Sue, if I'm not getting, and Rebecca's here too.
Oh, great.
So I think that would put us, I think the town contributed roughly 15,000 last year. So that would be similar again this year.
Yeah, last year,
It was like 15,800.
when you get to the budget on that,
When we say last year, do we mean this year or
Yeah.
really last year?
who's on first?
Fireworks are funny because that was actually, well, it was this year,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it,
By 4 days.
yeah, so it's like it falls right after the,
So the budget in FY26, which would have been the fireworks most recently, was $15,000. And I think that's what we paid, was $15,000. And now that we're looking at 22 for the next fireworks. And
so to David's point, if we do 15 as part of the budget, then they got to fundraise or use reserves up for the 7.
I think they'd have to do a little bit of both because the reserve right now is
8.
yeah,
8,600.
8,600. So they would need to raise at least another 1,000 or two, I think, to cover their expenses after that. And
Rebecca, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So yeah, we're comfortable with raising money to get us through the proceeds for prizes and for free face painting and bouncy castle and all that stuff, because we also are going to do an aggressive sponsorship. I know that, Northfield gave us $1,000 last year, and so we're looking at more sponsorships that way. So we're fine with spending our reserves to help cover the gap on the fireworks, and know that we will also raise money to put on the event for this year. Any other questions that you guys had for Sue or I?
Think that just your comfort level with that approach was our biggest question.
Okay, yeah, we're super comfortable of like draining it and building it back up, and that it will go on this year as normal.
Which then suggests 15, but
Yeah.
Connie.
This is my year to get on my soapbox, guys, because this is my last round. I can tell you, not a fan of coin drops. Our treasurer, not a fan of coin drops. Our auditors, not a fan of coin drops.
Probably our lawyer too, but he always gives us advice that people don't like.
It's just, there are just too many gaps in accounting controls. I have heard rumors of past years where, oh, this person went in the back door with the money. I saw him take money out of the bucket and put it in their bucket. It's been counted on the tables at Papa McKee's. Not a good idea with people coming and going. There's no employee involved in the process. So you were talking non-employees handling a lot of money. We have to make arrangements. They have to count it. It needs to match what we have to count. Someone has to pick it up, bring it here, lock it up.
I don't think we're gonna stop doing the coin drop, so not to make you waste your time, but
No, I hear what
$1,000 in
you're
the
saying.
community spirit that comes along with it, I think it's well worth the added.
So the other
Future
part
decisions.
is that we started doing the GoFundMe this year. I cannot tell you how many hours I spent working on that. It was just a nightmare trying to deal with GoFundMe. It's in addition to the coin drop, they hand out these things and people
Yeah.
can and pay
What
them.
about it is challenging?
The whole thing. You don't get to talk to a live person. Authentication gets tougher and tougher every year, and all I was doing was renewing the people that were on it. I would say easily over 30 hours of just me trying to handle that, and they didn't end up using it. My recommendation, I hear you about coin drops. I'm just going to be very clear to the public. My recommendation, do the GoFundMe, do it on the day of the event while people are walking in. Call it a day. It's too much. And to expect somebody from staff to be available to go get that money.
I mean, there's gotta be a way where we like we have the the 4th of July set up as a town committee now, if they were to be an association that is separate from the town and just hand over a lump sum of money, none of that's our problem.
Right.
Which is how every other town does it. So that way it's like, we don't have to deal with the accounting. We just deal with like the point of the money coming to us.
Yep.
Why can't we just do something like that to like, we don't have you auditing it. And like, if they do it, like, well, I don't know. Generally speaking, I don't think if someone's defrauding the Richmond of $100 in the fireworks, like that's on them. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, they were, before they were separate, they were a nonprofit all of their own, and I guess it fell apart and they wanted the town to manage it, but when the town managed it, it was a very difficult adjustment for them to follow the rules, and they're not my rules, not our
Yeah,
rules.
no, I understand that. I mean, there are town policies in place, right, that they have to follow. It seems like, similar to the fire department, not magnitudes or any of that, but it's just you have a volunteer organization with town employee policies and they just don't mesh well. And there's a big learning curve there and a lot of inefficiencies, I guess.
And you're right, the fire department, they do that on their own. They should be following our policies, but nobody's auditing.
And they broadly try to as best they can, but they're just not full-time employees working 40 hours a week. So it's tricky. Go ahead, Bart.
Yeah, I'm only going to observe, since tonight's a budget meeting, not the
Policy
fundraising
question.
advisory committee,
Yeah.
that
So anyway,
I think we might
We have-
ask the committee to have a conversation with Connie about how their fundraising works. In the scheme of our budget, if it's plus or minus 6,000, it's margin of error for anything. So
good point.
I think it's reasonable to have the conversation about how they raise money, but I'm gonna suggest, for the purpose of the budget and moving on, we pick a figure to put in here and defer that to maybe they come back to us with a
Agreed.
separate conversation.
Valuable conversation to happen at a separate time. It seems like the $15,000 number, 15 and 7, seems to line up with our current funding amount, and then also our ability to pull money out of reserves.
So if we plug in 15, then
So I'll make the motion to set aside 15,000 of town.
You don't
funds.
really need them. I don't think you need a motion. This is
I think it's just consensus.
add it to the
Caitlin,
budget.
do you have comments on this topic?
I've kind of gone back and forth on this one, but I think that I'm aligned with the setting the budget and then having them fundraise the rest.
And I know we have discussed funding it through the budget or putting it on a ballot. And so our desire is to fund it through the budget to the same amount as last year. Is
For
that,
this year, but if I'm still around next year, I would like to see it go on the ballot.
So I have a suggestion. As we contemplate what we can actually do on town meeting day,
Yeah.
maybe we propose that this is a discussion item for those who are able and willing to attend to. And it's
Good
not
idea.
binding, it's just advisory.
Yeah.
What do the people present suggest about a fireworks budget? Should it be fully funded by the town, partially funded by the town, not funded at all by the town, and have that conversation?
Or voted on by at town meeting.
And that could be another proposal, if there's like the group present on town meeting day might say, put it on the budget or put it on the ballot as a separate budget item and see
Yeah.
what people want to do.
So
Which both gets us through the budget discussion, but also sets us up for
What they did.
at least some input about how do we deal with it thereafter. Does that make sense?
makes sense.
So we're gonna do 15,000 in the budget, take it off the ballot, have a discussion.
And I think next year, I get the sense that the reserve will not replenish to an amount that we will be spending $7,000 out of it next year. So
Yeah.
this discussion will have to happen either way.
Yeah.
I know it's the 250th anniversary of our country, but I suspect that price is now locked in permanently and it will not go down for next year just because it's not an anniversary.
You think?
Venturing a guess.
You're
Yeah.
probably right. All right, so I'm sorry, I was messing with the budget here. Let me
I got 0.83.
Yeah, I was making other changes based on the earlier conversation. Let me just make sure I can get back to your same number and then we'll get back to that. 82, 84. You got 0.83.
Yep.
I got 0.83 as well. So all right, so if we can get back to the interest question.
Oh, yeah.
And I did have an idea based on what Adam was saying about maybe some potential changes. So we're at 0.83, both of us.
Yep.
Okay, 0.83, great. Okay, so that would be, if we add that in, it's a 0.83% increase in the taxes over the last year for that additional 15,000. And you want to look at the other one, the capital plan you want to look at next, Connie? To look at the loans,
Oh, yeah.
circling back to where we were 20 minutes
Yeah.
ago.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
I would just point out that for $22,000, we can buy every Richmond resident of every age 2 Roman candles, approximately.
Our insurance.
Our insurance.
however-
So the fire chief he seems to be not impressed. And I guess the police chief doesn't look very entertained either, so we'll table that.
So Connie, you wanted to walk through this one a little bit to look at interest.
Yeah, a couple of the statuses up above have now gone from active to complete. So that brings us all the way down to line 15.
Let me just make this a little bigger. Okay, so you want to go to line 15?
And this is just showing what we've paid in interest to date, or the last time I did this, which was last year.
This is total interest over the last, gotcha.
The
Cumulative
2000
interest, right? Not annual.
The 2005 engine will wrap up this year, will be the final payment. As same with the 2018. So they both finish in 26. So I would change those both to Cs.
And this is total interest for the entire life of the loan that we
Yes.
paid.
Yeah. So then that leaves us the remaining loans really start down on line 24.
And it's the total loan payment, not just the interest, right?
This is just the interest.
Okay.
Next one's line 24. I was just trying to freeze pane so I can get down here and look at it.
Yeah.
So these, I guess we still have Millard Street, Jericho Road.
That's it. And those are bonds that would have had lower interest. Banks would only do a loan. They don't even like 5 years. They prefer 3 years. So if we're buying equipment, things like that. Whereas the last fire truck, maybe the last 2 we bought, were actually through 5-year loans, not the bond bank, but you will pay more interest at the bank.
What's the header or what is the values? What do the values in column G represent?
In column G, oh, those are just my totals for
Oh, yeah.
those
the subs-
categories.
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah, the fire ones are high, but also the most expensive is the equipment. So I would expect that.
We also have longer loans on those pieces of equipment generally than
Right.
a lot of other things.
Right.
Some of the
Hopefully they last longer than your typical equipment.
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of interesting because we're paying for the 2005 engine this year and replacing it this year. So we're paying for the replacement and the loan at the same time.
it's kind of depressing.
Well, so that was an example of the overlap, right?
Yeah.
There is a long story behind that. Our newest dump truck is 2020. Looks like it.
Yeah, this is a little old, Jack. This is from 2023, I think, Connie's last time we did this.
Yeah.
So our newest dump truck is probably newer than 2020 at this point, right?
So if we went out, go to the highway tab.
So this is somewhat dated or outdated.
Yeah, it's not perfect right now.
And that's strictly the loans. I
Right.
don't have, I mean, obviously I don't have straight
So the newest
purchases
one,
in
we don't
there.
have a loan.
Our newest
Six years.
dump truck is
Yeah,
dump truck number 3 that we got in fiscal year 23. And we're scheduled to get one this year, but the company is
So that
delayed, so we won't get
dump
it.
truck 3 was bought with capital reserve funds, right? So it
Correct.
doesn't have a loan on it.
Correct.
There, so what you're looking at, Connie, dump truck 3 gets replaced in FY30.
Any questions?
So Jack, we have the dump trucks are on a 7-year replacement
Oh,
schedule.
okay.
And Pete bases that on, we'll trade in what we have. And if we trade them in prior to the warranty running out and by the 7th year, we get a good trade in on them.
Right, that's why.
Yeah, so our newest dump truck is what, we have a 2023, we have a 22, we have a 20, and we have a 19. According to the capital plan. So one thought I had, oh God, I have to, sorry, there's like a weird button popping up right where I need to move the budget to. So give me a sec to navigate and then I'll share my screen again. So one of the things we were doing this year with the reserve and restricted funds, or sorry, unassigned and restricted funds, is overfunding some of the reserves so that we can pay things down in the future. So what I was kind of doing in the background was looking at what if we took this 82,844 that we were using from highway restricted funds and put that into the highway reserve and then increase what we added to the reserve and then looked at the capital plan, that would buy down next year's contribution by about $82,000. So it's
Kind of shift the, kind of front load the increase slightly.
yeah, so front load to next year. And I mean, we could go back and look at each reserve and sort of see what makes sense to front load, but I just took that one because it's about $100,000 and you can kind of easily just drop that in and it would pay things down. So if that 250 went to let's see. We did $250,000 plus 82,844. This would go to 32,844. That would go to 0. Then this 575 would go to 657,844. If we would just be basically taking it, shifting it, putting that into the highway capital reserve. Now that we've made the change with the fireworks, our tax rate would be at 2.72%. And then what that would do to the capital plan is we'd get back to our summary page. Okay. Then this number would drop down to $267,000. So we would drop this down to 669. I think it was at, I don't have it in front of me, but it was about $80,000 more before we did that. So that is,
52 maybe,
what's that?
752, something like that.
Where, yeah, so, yeah, I think
Anyway.
we just looked at it. It was about
Yeah.
750, 760, yeah.
That would make sense. I guess I'm just, the 10% amount doesn't alarm me in that, like, God, that's untenable, that's impossible or whatever. I mean, that's a large amount. next year, but it just seems like that's the amount that it'll get a lot of people to really fundamentally question like what we're spending money on. And not that that's a bad thing, but it'll happen like in a reactive, not planned out way. Does that make sense? And so get the sense we'll be forced to make cuts that kind of might hurt us long term and might not be in line with like the policies and goals of the town. But a 10% increase is enough to make people want to do that.
Yep.
In spite of the long-term consequences. And so if we count on having that conversation next year, I mean, I think there's a good chance the outcome of it kind of hurts the towns.
So are you inclined to try to keep it close to 0 or 1%? And with the risk that it will bump up significantly next year? Or do you want to flatten it out to be slightly higher this year and slightly lower increase next year?
What do you think, Bart? I'm not, neither
I'm
seems
torn
a great
myself.
option. I'm torn.
Yeah, yeah.
I just know like if I saw 10% and I wasn't intimately familiar with these numbers, I would come in and be like, what the heck is going on here? Especially after all these years of incremental increases and then I would come and look at it and be like, so you kind of like the jig is up and now you got to tell me you got to increase 10%, like no, cut 10% out. And then if we have to cut 10%, like we are in if we had to actually cut 10% of costs, we would be having a very, very painful 3 or 4 meetings right now.
Mhm.
And that could realistically, people aren't going to come in and tell us we're doing a good job with the budget, but people will come in and tell us we're doing a bad job and we need to cut stuff. I don't know. I don't have an answer. I don't know. I can see that kind of happening if all of the stars align and we are able to hire police and we are able to purchase cars and we were able to do all that stuff. It could be in that spot. And
Well, it turns directly into a conversation of what don't you want,
yeah, I agree.
which has the beauty of being a great line from a movie.
I mean, it's
I don't
kind of where we were last year, right? Where we didn't have unassigned funds to use. So what we had to do was really look at, and that's where we sort of kicked the can a little bit of some of the
Yeah.
reserve contributions, because we tried to go as thin as we possibly could last year. Because we tried to find unassigned funds basically from the special project reserve fund funding the flood. And we only used like $70,000 in unassigned funds. But now we're swinging back pretty far hard.
I guess I'm just inclined to, I think that the overfunding the reserves or maybe making up for lost time or whatever you want to call it makes our tax rate more accurately reflect like our actual expenses. And so, I mean, I think that's whenever possible a good thing. And if we get to put money and invest it a little bit, soften the blow, that's good. I also know there's a concern about saving money that we don't need now and people are paying for it. And if you move out of town or whatever, it's kind of, there's a legitimate argument to be made there that, funding reserves way front loading them is not necessarily fair for everyone. I mean, I don't know.
And that's where I step out. It's like, I'm not a resident
Policy
here.
question and a financial question.
I'm strictly looking at this as what makes financial sense. And to me, it's earning interest, not paying interest.
At the risk of muddying the water, I mentioned this building. For people who are on the water sewer system, we're facing significant expenses, and it's not yet clear what that means to rates, but those are big expenses, both with the wastewater treatment plant and whatever we choose to do with this building. Even flattening out round numbers, what we were talking before, 10 million for this building. So you even flatten it out, but 2 or 3 million there, 2 or 3 million here, sooner or later, you're talking real money.
I would argue 2 or 3 million is already real.
I'm being facetious, but
Yeah.
it illustrates the context. I mean, we just spent a while talking about $15,000, and $15,000 and work on this building is
Half of a
margin
door.
of error.
Half of a door, right?
Yeah.
No, we sat in a meeting, and granted that was about water, but it was interesting. They talked about contribute to your reserves as we're, looking at a bond vote for that at some point. And we talked about it quite a while. Contribute to your reserves, increase your rates. And I'm like, and then I went to a training on Thursday and they talked about it there as well. Contribute to your reserves.
I mean, ultimately, the cost of running the town or running the water and sewer or whatever costs a certain amount, and you got to raise the money. So we either do it ahead of time or we do it later or we borrow and pay it off. But
Well, isn't it also a truth that while school taxes have gone up significantly, largely driven by personnel, there are a lot of school buildings in this state that suffer from significant deferred maintenance. So the same thing there, they don't have reserves for it. That some of the stuff will come home to roost for them as well.
optimistic that you were giving me positive outlook. Does not appear to
Unfortunately,
be the case. Yeah.
I think it just illustrates the challenge. And if you were the school board, if what was the news a couple of weeks ago, 12%
Yeah.
property tax increase for schools?
Are you going to start a reserve on top of that? I don't think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Caitlin, what do you think? You haven't weighed in.
Yeah, I feel like we want to keep the tax rate low, but I don't want to create a problem for next year for sure. And I I do think that some of our reserves are like there was things in some of them that we went through last time that we were like, oh well, we could cut this down or we could, take part of this out in the loan later. And so it seems like there's some flexibility there that we should take advantage of, but of course, not all of it. I was also wondering, we talked last time about the fire station and the extension expansion. And did we take that, lower that down, or did we push that to later? I'm just wondering what we ended up doing with that part.
I think did we lower the contribution on that one?
Um,
I think it was fire and highway.
do we lower the contribution on the fire reserve?
Yeah, let me go back a couple of capital plans.
I don't want to lower the contribution on the fire reserves generally, but like we did talk about that we wouldn't necessarily need that expansion. So, contributing with, that line item, felt like we could repurpose that or, reduce that down this year until we figure out what we needed or whatever it may be.
I guess the more I think about it, it seems like we have, as Caitlin brings up with the fire department, we don't necessarily need expansion, but the building probably is going to need work. Right, Jerry?
Yeah, I got some work scheduled this month.
And this building needs a significant amount of work. Water sewer system needs work, which is not, depending how you look at it, maybe not part of this budget discussion, but just broadly speaking,
Yes.
there are many more things in our town that need work than don't.
Mhm.
And so funding a reserve of some sort seems prudent.
That's a good way of looking at it, I think. You're going to run into it. And even if we're not going to save 10 million for this building in
No,
near term,
we
but
are talking about starting that planning process. So maybe that could be part of that planning process for what that looks like.
right.
I don't think we're looking over the horizon with these things. We might be like looking across the field as far as timeline. I mean, these are the maintenance, but the maintenance time for these buildings is coming due pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
So
I think oh, go ahead.
If I were to looking at that, the possible addition, if I'm looking at fiscal year 27 up to fiscal year 32, where that is, if we decide to create a CD for the fire department reserve, that's really the biggest purchase in the next 5 years. We'd be able to earn quite a bit of interest on those CDs to help with that 400,000. But I can't put that into the capital plan until, you know what I mean? Next year, when we do the capital plan, you can look and say, oh, yeah,
Here's what we've got.
we need to raise this much less this year because we earned this much in interest last year. And that's a pretty decent size.
What we can say is that broadly speaking, if we fund that reserve, it'll lower our needed revenues in the future,
Right.
Both directly and indirectly through interest.
directly and indirectly.
Okay.
Um,
What do you as select board members think we should do?
I am not shocked or abashed by a 2 or 3% increase to maintain some of the reserve accounts for planned expenses, not just saving it for a rainy day, but we do have planned expenses.
There's a lot, and I think we have identified a fraction of the planned expenses we could probably identify if we sat here.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have any thoughts on that? Anyone online?
I think I agree. I think a 2% increase is not like anything terrible. I think the question I'll have for next year is, we put away money for the reserves. They're pretty general, great. They can contribute to things, but as we plan out for future years, I think there's some things that we know, okay, for if we need to order a new plow or whatever it may be, like we have that pretty in line with what we need there. And then there's other things that, we're probably estimating on like the bridge and so forth. And so anything that we can get a better idea of from the building standpoints of like what money we want to plan on for each year in spending against or towards the project in the long term, I think we can get a little bit tighter on that so that we can actually have numbers towards those things versus us, talking about maybe and well, probably this and so forth. And so I think with that, like Jerry, I know you're in the room for next year. I would love to see like if we're not going to do the addition, like what should we do and what are the building maintenance things that we'll need for that building? Obviously, the town center, we have an idea around the stuff that has to happen there, and we can maybe break that down. And then, whatever else in terms of building wise, we need to account for a little bit more specifically. And just to be very clear, I'm not saying we shouldn't do the expansion to the fire department if that's what we need. I think we talked about at one point that we wouldn't necessarily need that. So what do we need for next year?
Instead of just squirreling away the money indefinitely, I mean, there's probably maintenance things we could do that would be an investment in that building that would make it both function well, but also, continue to hold its value and not deteriorate. I mean, I know at some point the cost of deterioration exceeds the amount it would cost just to fix the building initially.
Yeah, exactly. And what are the things that we can, kind of look towards over time? But again, I don't think we need to answer that this year. So I'm just putting it out there for next year.
Bard, looks like you have something to say.
I agree generally in the capital plan, we should be specific about what we're trying to do. So when we say, oh, we'll do something, I'm less comfortable with that than saying this is how we're going to spend it, whether it's for planning or execution.
Quick question, Pete, do you have, like, I know we have a capital plan, all the budget, all the, big infrastructure projects you have planned. Are there any other projects that are popping up around town that you think are going to be a large expense that we should start planning for? Or is there anything that's been on the horizon? I mean, even if it's not something we're going to plan for tonight, just so we kind of can shape our view of it for next year and the next coming years.
Well, we've got these mitigation projects from these past 2 flood years that have to be done, and we're not really sure how that process is going to play out. We're talking millions between Dugway Road, Snipe Island Road, Stage Road. So those are to be seen. But we know for sure there's a bridge in Southview that needs full replacement. There's always something. So
is there any like
right now we've been very aggressive in the last 20 years in road maintenance. Really, keeping up with all our infrastructure as best as we can and trying to incrementally fix things. But the bigger items that are like bridges and stuff like that, those are out of our control. So those are I think right now it's nothing that we haven't already got in our bullseye, but looking at the last 2 years, I mean, who knows? I mean, And back to the question about the reserves, I absolutely believe funding the reserves are the best thing you can do. That's going to make you some extra money with these CDs, but it's also allowing you this cushion. And we use this money. This saved us last year. So I can't speak any more to it than that.
So I always hear, I know we had a couple of things we had to kind of weigh in on as far as ordinance violations. The town health officer, we had that stagnant water, and then we have stormwater problems by the railroad tracks and all that. Is there any like big stormwater project we're gonna have to deal with over there? Kind of the southern from I guess it would be like Millet Street on down. I know that floods all the time and all that stuff.
Yes, that underground
Something we can
underground
plan for,
system
or
that
is that-
comes. Well, it's not even in the plans yet. It hasn't even been engineered, but Josh could maybe speak to it. But it crosses the railroad right away.
Sorry,
It
Josh.
crosses
Sorry,
through private
I was
property. It crosses
just
through the
asking.
Richmond Rescue. It's there's
That's
multiple
a
properties
big
involved.
comprehensive project.
Huge. Yeah. And sizing it and engineering it and all that stuff is, dealing with the railroad is going to be its own process. So
It's not just our buildings that need to be funded. Great.
Right, and
Right.
that's a long run, is it not, Pete? I mean, what's the length there?
I think we're looking at 300 to 400 feet, linear feet.
And
But
multiple-
you've got that entire railroad right
property
away,
owners.
which is very, very difficult to get through
Yeah.
without, massive amounts of permits and, look what we had to do to get the water line under, Bridge Street. So it'll be a
Yeah.
similar thing like that.
That little concrete bridge over by Faye's Corners is gonna be expensive in the not too distant future as well.
Yeah, that's a narrow bridge from 1929. It's very sound. It's a box culvert actually with poured walls on it, but it's narrow. It's what 18 feet wide. It doesn't meet the 22 or 24-foot spec it should be on a class 2 highway. So there's a lot of things like that would be nice to upgrade. Face Corners itself is another big issue. That 90-degree corner, the whole revamping of that. So I mean, there's projects that will probably come down the road, in the next 5 to 10 years, I foresee.
Pretty soon you're gonna want new tires for your trucks, Pete, too.
Nah, we'll just run the skins. It's all right.
All right,
Five more chains.
thank you, Pete. So I guess if we were to take that money and fund reserve, like to Bard's point, I think it's prudent to fund something specific and not
Yeah, I mean, we
Broadly
want to
throw
be
money in the
thoughtful about
bank.
throwing money.
what makes sense. Is there any department head or do we have a glaring hole that we could fund with an established reserve? I mean, I know this building
Not good.
could, should, yeah. Good point. I know this building, we always talk about needing work, but do we have a means to fund that? And is that prudent, or is there something else that would be worthwhile?
I have no input for the capital plan for this building. Library's given me some for the future years that they see being done over there, but right now there's nothing plugged in there to
Spend?
We don't have a
No.
plan.
spend. I mean, if we were,
I mean, like, we don't have any planned expenses. We're not planning it. I think that is potentially changing. I mean, I know we have reviewed an RFP to
so
evaluate this building and get a project going. So I think that
Josh, can you bring up the town center tab?
We have a plan to plan.
we have a plan to make a plan.
Concept of a plan.
Yeah.
In the town center plan, we have the regular annual expenses, utilities, insurance, building maintenance for this building, and we have what the library's given us. And I've put in the revenue source. I mean, it grows, but not a whole lot each year if you look at the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we do have a plan to start the process where we would
Right.
need money to do that for this building. Is that something we want to put money into? I mean, I don't know. That's just something that pops into mind for me because I was on the committee, and I think you two gentlemen had the privilege of doing that for a period of time too.
Two meetings.
So it just popped, and we were sitting in that building. I walked by and saw the bricks crumbling. Like, it makes sense to fund that, but there might be something that makes more sense too. I don't know.
I would say that's gonna be a bond. So maybe when Jericho Road drops off, this one picks up.
Does seem like we will not be able to fund a reserve adequately to deal with this.
To make enough impact, yeah.
That would be
So
at least a
with
20.
the money we were talking about funding to reserve, what reserve would that make a meaningful impact in, or do we just spread it around? What reserve will make a meaningful
I
impact?
think we need to look at it.
Yeah, so I did just start, I mean, I think. All right, let's see here. Sorry. So I did start to kind of, and I think I realized I need to keep a formula
Did you have something to
in
say?
here.
Just have a question.
Yeah.
We were talking about fire and police and highway. Do we also fund Richmond Rescue, and do they have savings?
We do fund them, but we don't do it. We do it through, is it charitable appropriation? How do we,
Well, they're a separate organization, so we contract with
We-
them.
yeah.
Contract.
we contribute to their budget every year,
1 month.
but they're a nonprofit separate from the town. So it's a little different. And I don't know, they do give us their financial reports.
Yeah, but it's a
Not-
fee for service on our end.
Yeah, we kind of treat it like a contract service. And then I assume they maintain balances on their end, but we don't maintain any balances or anything on our end for them.
All right, so what I started to do was look back at some of the changes I just made for highway and realize I do still need to keep a formula in here that references the amount of unassigned that we have. So my initial estimate was a little bit off because once you add the expense to the expense side, it kind of adjusts what you need
Gotcha.
to keep on hand. So just Connie, maybe help follow my methodology. What I looked at was I said, okay, if we used, we'll start over here on the highway. Contribute $320,417 to the highway equipment reserve. So that would mean then that our expenses over here, we're going to go up to 645,417. Then the revenue, we're going to have 332,844 is what we're going to put out of 320,417. Did I? Shoot, why don't those numbers match? Sorry, trying to do this on the fly gets a little 320,417. So that needs to go to 320. Okay, and then that's going to be one. Okay.
1,864.
Yeah, so I think I did that right, Connie. You take the number here, you put that into the revenue, and then that automatically pulls that. And then what was your number in this number here, Connie? Originally?
Back.
On the budget we presented tonight.
On tonight's, okay.
Yeah, is that 575? I think it was. Oops.
We had 575
Okay,
and funding it with 250K of restricted.
so if that is now funded instead of 250, that's now going to be funded with 320, right? So our total increase is 70,417. So 575, 70,000, what did I say? 417. Okay, so I did get that number right. Okay. And then what I did was I said, well, let's look at another reserve besides that. If we looked at the fire reserve, and I picked this one just because we've got expensive fire trucks, we've got possible expensive additions. This was at $50,000. If we increase that to $100,000, we then increased this to $100,000 that we're pulling out of unassigned funds. So that is going to, on the expense side, oh, I highlighted it in yellow. I did.
Line 304.
Thanks. $304. Our reserve transfer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've changed versions, sorry.
So I increased that to 270. Or was it 220?
Initially, we had 20 and 220.
Yeah, so if we increase that by $50,000, right, it was at 220. I added $50,000 more there, it's 270, because that's what we're doing. So we're increasing this to 100. It was 50.
Okay.
That goes to 100. So now our leftover reserves is 337,954, which is 337,954. It takes into account contributions to reserves. The total amount minus contributions to reserves is 337,954. Then that gets us to a tax rate of it's 3.99. I don't know if that's too high, but that's basically pulling in 90-ish in highway and 50,000 for fire, putting those into reserves, which would increase the reserves. And that also then does help us pay down in the future, because next year we'll have those reserves funded at a higher level. It's too much to do right now, but we can look at what that would look like at the next meeting for future reserve contributions to both reserves. And then it does increase the interest slightly in the CDs, which we're not really going to forecast for budget purposes, but we can forecast contributions for the next couple of years based on those changes.
So to restate the obvious, the less you fund reserves at the front end, if you're gonna pay for something with reserves, the more you have to load into future years.
Or the longer you have to wait.
Or the longer you have to wait, the more you have to borrow.
So, I mean, that doesn't really get to your question, Matt, about which reserve should we fund. Again, I picked those two because they tend to have the biggest expenses or biggest piece of equipment of the ones that were funded.
I guess I would just point out that in Vermont, December 2025, they say our 12-month prior CPI inflation is 6.5%.
Really?
Yeah. Core CPI is 5.57. Either way we're talking.
And we have generally said, let's try to do better than inflation. That's part of the context here, right?
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize that inflation was that high.
Well, it's gone up since we first looked at it.
Yeah. Significantly. Yeah, I mean, so a lot.
Yep.
I'm trying to think, does it make sense to fund the ones more that are being utilized within the next 5 years?
Which ones would those be? Without looking, I don't have it off the top of my head.
It's gotta be highway, right? Aren't we rotating vehicles?
Well, let's see.
And there's predictable whether it's the next 5 years or not. Fire, I mean, the things are expensive enough that you gotta plan far ahead.
Yeah.
So so part of what I did, we talked at the last meeting about lowering the contribution on the Southview Bridge. So I did lower it for fiscal year 27 in the capital plan, but then I continued to fund it as if we were raising the 1 million by fiscal year 31. If we put more than 50,000 in this year, then we can put less in. So basically it goes from 50 to 100 to 125 to 125 to 130 the final year to meet the 100.
Connie, where are you at? Maybe I can follow along.
Sorry, I'm on the capital plan. The
Or-
bridge and culvert.
I don't think
tab.
we're ever gonna raise enough money to pay for all of the bridge replacements in cash. It's just not gonna happen.
No,
It's just this one bridge that we're.
I know,
that's all that's here now.
but that's just one. It's not the only one. So that's
So-
my point. I don't think we're ever gonna,
We can look at one specific, but like broadly speaking, if we look at bridges, we're not gonna fund them all enough to do that.
and I think if we can't fund them all, I personally don't think we should be saying, oh, let's fund this one at 100%, and the other ones, well, when they pop up, we'll have to borrow at 100%.
Right, so then you would look at, okay, well, how much is it? And would it be a short-term loan through the bank? Or would it be a bond vote? And for more years. I mean, to me, a bridge that does make sense with because
Yeah,
it's
the
gonna
bridge
last longer.
piece of infrastructure that has a long decades lifespan.
And
Right.
it fits some of the other large scale highway projects, Jericho Road, things like that, that I'm sort of resigned for those high budget items. We're going to be borrowing money.
Yeah.
Or bonding money.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of funding reserves, but I think realistically, I line that up with how I would operate my own business or personal life. I mean, a budget, an item of that magnitude, you kind of just assume you're not going to fund in cash.
Are you going to buy a house in cash?
I would love to, but
There.
depends on the house. There were some nice birdhouses at the holiday market.
So because this is considered part of the budget, once we contribute to it through vote, then we can't use it for something else. So do we change the capital plan? We could contribute 0. We could say we have 523,000 in that reserve. We're gonna count on borrowing 500,000 out in fiscal year 31, and we're not gonna continue funding the reserve for the next 5 years.
So I guess it would, you guys have this, I mean, I would say we continue to fund reserves in general. I mean, it is true that obviously once if we fund the Jericho, or sorry, the Southview Bridge fully, and we fund other bridges 0, if we spend $20 million in bridges, we're still spending $20 million in bridges. So it doesn't really matter. In my mind, it doesn't matter how we break that out. What happens if we fund the reserve and it costs less than what we funded in the reserve?
It hangs out in the reserve until you use it again for something.
Or we can rename the reserve.
You wouldn't rename the reserve.
We can repurpose the reserves or take the money out of the reserve. And
Well,
fund
the
a new-
reserve itself is called Highway Bridge and Culvert.
Okay.
That particular line, which is the only line we have, is called Southview Drive.
So if we fund Southview Drive, like, are we statutorily required to spend that money on the Southview Drive Bridge, or can it be used in highway? So
Any bridge and culvert project, it could be used.
I think that we have enough bridge and culvert projects that we
Right.
could comfortably fund that, and it's a
So
worthwhile.
Keep funding it, but then
So you guys
don't
wanna-
use all the reserve.
Yeah.
Use half.
Well, or we can make that policy decision when we get there. I mean, if interest rates are low, borrow. If interest rates are high, then don't borrow. I mean, I think it makes sense to be able to have that flexibility if we could.
And then as you get closer, I mean, if we do have a bad year, then okay, we'll drop it down and our plan will be to borrow a little bit more when it has to be done.
So Pete, go ahead.
So the anticipation on the bridges is to get a grant. So we'd be responsible for like 20%. So this process will have to start pretty soon because it could be a 5 to 7 year out type thing. We're not anticipating paying 100% out of pocket for this stuff. If it's over 20 feet in length, it does qualify. I believe that Southview Bridge is just barely inside that parameter. But there's other areas, like you said, the Face Corner Bridge, David, you brought that up. So that bridge and culvert reserve, just for instance, last year we lost Hillview Road. It got completely cut off. We pulled from that fund to put that large diameter culvert in and reopened the road. So, having that fund available allowed us, to immediately fix something. So it's got a lot of uses. It's not just earmarked for one specific thing.
And then I'm assuming with this grant, we have to provide proof of funds on our end, right? So having a reserve that we can use to provide the proof of match funds is advantageous also.
Yeah.
We should maintain enough in there that we can match any grant, because it would be crazy to turn down grants.
Right. So, I mean,
Didn't have match funds. I mean, that's not
I'm going to go way back to 1999, the Jonesville Bridge. That was an old Iron Trust bridge. Some of you may remember that. Some of you may not. It got to the point where that got physically closed, and all of a sudden the priorities changed in Montpelier. The town received 90% funding on that, but we had applied for a bridge grant. Oh gosh, friend Thomas could probably even tell you, probably 8 or 10 years before that bridge actually got replaced. And this is when this bridge and culvert fund got started. We started putting money aside for our match towards it. So it has grown to this point now. We use it for everything, but so it's a really vital reserve to have because it covers all your large structures in town.
Should we put money in it or should we put it somewhere else?
I think we should make this decision every year, and I think
Yeah.
the conversation today, how much money are we talking about putting in it?
We have 50,000 budgeted for FY27 currently. And that's all out of taxes, nothing out of,
What are we talking if we were to, what were the other amounts we had just come up with shuffle that we could, where had you allocated those? Sorry, Josh, I
Yeah.
forget.
No, that's all right. Fire reserve and the highway contribution for just the regular highway reserve.
So most of the money that's being used in the next 5 years is highway. They have. So I'll just go from 26 to 31. That's about $2,482,000.
So we have expensive equipment and let's just say we probably anticipate more heavy rainfalls and floods unpredictably somewhere in town.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
It also seems like a lot of the major infrastructure projects we would use this funding for, we do leverage grant funding. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
the more money we put into this, the more money we can leverage in grant funding. And we get in the habit of doing that, we can get some serious bang for our buck on infrastructure projects.
Mhm.
Seems like not a terrible idea. Put the money in
Pete, is
there.
it also safe to say that having the reserve makes us more nimble than if we had to borrow money for every emergent need?
I think it saved us last year. I honestly do.
Yeah.
Connie could speak to that. Had we not had that much reserve and restricted funds available, we'd be paying a large amount of interest right now, waiting for this FEMA reimbursement. And every month that went by, we're on the hook for that interest. I'm not an accountant, but it was easy for Josh to say, green light, go fix it, because we had something that we could pay bills with immediately. So
Right.
if a lot of towns sat there with their infrastructure ruined and did nothing, they didn't have a red nickel. And that's sad, but I don't know. I mean, I really would hate that to ever happen in this town.
And Pete, not to keep flogging this one, but arguably to be nimble also might involve contractors, and to contract with somebody, you want to have the money in the bank to pay them, right?
Absolutely. They're invoicing, every 2 weeks to 30 days. So, they want payments. Connie, I think our invoices are coming in monthly or weekly. I can't remember how it went, with the 5 contractors we had, but there was one that we had to chase for money to get an invoice. But I think we were invoicing on a regular monthly schedule, so they were looking for payment as it went. So we got to front load the money. That's just, there's no way around it.
So highway.
So what if we pick a target, whether it be 0.83, whatever, pick a target. Because this is hard for me to do on the fly.
Yes,
Doing good,
yeah,
but I'm not so.
When you say pick a target, what?
Pick a target.
What
so
target?
say We're at
So-
0.83% increase right now without doing these changes. If we pick a target,
Or
and then I
tax
can
rate
sit down and look at what are our main purchases, and I'd be looking at trying to smooth out the next 5 years, because they're the highest.
I mean, I think, what Josh, what did you come up with, like just under 4?
It was at 3.99 based on the calculations I just did.
That seems like a reasonable number, and since we're funding reserves to a higher amount to do that, I think I'm more than happy to stand by that and explain that to people.
So
And we beat inflation.
Beat inflation, we're
Which was
funding our
our-
reserves more, we're trying to plan ahead. I think that's a win-win.
okay, so keep it below the 3.99,
It's below 4.
below 4, and put our main focus to smooth out the next 5 years.
And I think I wouldn't even say, smooth out and also ensure that we have solvency in the
Okay.
in our reserves.
And honestly, some of this is gonna be year to year, you know,
Yeah.
who knows what next year or the year after will bring us in anything. Federal, government, weather, climate, school.
So based on what you guys were just
Health
talking about
insurance.
with highway, do we want to put everything into the highway reserve? Or do you want us to look at other reserves and come back with some ideas?
I guess it seems like the highway is the one that we can't plan ahead for as
Yeah.
much. And so as counterintuitive as it seems, it makes sense to have that money put aside. I mean, the fire department can be very predictable because it's established plans, so we can have a plan and we can stick to it.
Makes sense.
Highway, having extra money could save our butt, and if we don't use it, we have no shortage of projects we could spend it on to kind of mitigate costs and keep our infrastructure maintained well. So putting into highway is just gonna pay off long term, no matter what we spend it on.
With that said, though, we have the highway capital reserve and then we have the bridge and culvert reserve. So whichever
Right.
those get voted into is where it has to live. What it's applied to
Sure.
changes.
So the way so for this year, whatever we put into it has to be stuck, and then if we realize we have balanced that incorrectly next year, we could
Adjust our
we can
investment.
adjust those, so.
Yeah.
You mean adjust the future contribution?
Yeah.
To kind of, if we say we put it all into bridge and culverts and we're like, wow, that was, they're kind of out of whack, we need more in the highway. General highway, I would say bridge and culverts seems reasonable, based on what Pete said. I don't think that we're ever gonna have too much money in that reserve.
So what if should we sort of try to split it between the regular highway reserve and the bridge and culvert reserve? That way it's all highway money,
And so regular highway reserve, what is that? That's equipment purchases,
That's like-
generally, right?
vehicles mostly.
Same thing, I mean, in my mind, that's similar to the fire department, like, we already have a plan for that,
Okay,
and we can stick to it. The culverts and all that, even the predictable parts of them are pretty unpredictable when you get into the project.
okay, so if we put, I mean, it looks like right
Pete,
now,
do you have a input on that? I mean, your truck and equipment replacement schedule is very predictable, right? But do you have a reason we shouldn't just put it into bridge and culvert, or do you have a opinion on that?
No, I would say the capital equipment plan, it runs about 95% accurate. Wouldn't you say that, Connie? The numbers seem to hit pretty much on target. The trades have been very accurate with our numbers. The worst thing that would happen is if the select board decided to, like, we're going to push these purchases out and then we're going to back everything up. Right now, everything's kind of in a rotating cycle. So you pay off a note, you pick up a note. It's been working well. So yeah, it is predictable, Adam. Just the bridge and culvert one, it's a fund that to be used for large projects, but also can save us. And it saved us. And the fact that you can get some, put it in the CD and earn some quick money on it. I mean, I think it's a great fund to keep going.
You guys think? The highway guy says we should fund the highway reserve.
Of course, the highway guy would say that.
No, I do appreciate your synopsis of it.
Pete, maybe you could give me a couple of the things tomorrow that you were saying could be projects that could be in the future, and maybe
Yeah,
how far out in the future,
Yeah.
whether it be
great.
10, 15. Our capital plan is really for 5 years.
That would be great, because right now we talk about the Southview Bridge, but I mean, to have
Yeah.
more descriptors on there, so we know that this is more than that, and it's kind of a lot of projects out there. I think having 5 projects in the title of something explains why that reserve is so well funded. Yeah.
Yeah, that could definitely, I could come up with the drainage, the large diameter drainage issues that are in the future to be dealt with. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Be great.
think,
Caitlin, you got anything you want to weigh in on?
Nope.
Tweaks?
Nope,
Can you
I
just-
think you guys all covered it. I think it's good.
David, you got any last minute critiques? You gonna save them for the January meeting?
Once everything's finalized. Actually.
so I might have an estimate. Give me a sec. Connie, on your budget, how much were we contributing to the highway equipment reserve in the unassigned funds?
The one we came into this meeting with, or
Yeah,
an old one?
no, the one we came into this meeting, how much is going to unassigned fund, from unassigned funds, or restricted funds into the equipment reserve?
On the revenue side.
Yeah.
We had down,
Or, yeah, on the revenue side, I guess. Oh, I could probably.
we were doing, let's see, the line that said highway budget
250, right?
offset from restricted was 82,844.
Mm,
And,
yeah, no, but it was 250 to the,
and then 250
reserve.
to the other one.
250 to the reserve, right?
Yep.
Okay, so then that gets us 72, 344. Okay, so. I think. Oh, that actually. Yeah, let's do it tomorrow. Cause I'm looking at like, no, cause I think if we put 120 is what I was looking at.
If you guys want to figure it out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll do it. We might even be able to just bring it back as a quick update at the meeting
That'd be
next
great.
week.
That'd be awesome.
And that, right? I mean, it's not that much.
Unless something's like really out of whack and it's
Yeah.
completely.
Okay, so we're looking
I
at
think we're.
below 4%, put all the increase in the bridge and culvert reserve and see what we can do. Okay, I think I know what we're doing then. All right. Good enough.
What else you got?
Next,
What else we
we'll
got?
get that for the December meeting, December 15th meeting. I think that is kind of, I guess the only other thing we might want to talk about is pickleball. Well, just knowing that, since we're talking a lot about capital reserve, there's gonna be a $12,000 cost in fiscal year 33 to resurface the courts.
Better do a coin drop.
We start now, we can make it.
Yeah.
Set up a GoFundMe of the pickleball courts.
So Connie's gonna retire, we'll just put her in charge of coin drop control.
Wait, so you're saying she can retire and come back and do the GoFundMe for free?
So
She can count all the coins. No, when,
authenticate me.
and we don't maybe have to talk about, I mean, it was just something to think about. Do we want to create an additional reserve for pickleball? Do we want to just assume that that might come out of the special projects reserve? We still have a few years to think about how to fund it, and it's only 12,000.
My just one thought is we're starting to get pretty granular, and I think that's an appropriate thing to consider. But then we have other pieces of equipment around town that are maybe not as obvious as resurfacing, but I remember back in the day, some of the backstops were decrepit and probably dangerous, and partly because we put them up and never figure out, oh, we're going to have to replace them someday. So I'm inclined to think, is there like a cluster of expenses, not just pickleball? And, I don't want to have like a backstop reserve and a pickleball reserve and a chalk for lining reserve.
Home base reserve, first base reserve. We should go around.
And I think it's a really reasonable question or issue to talk about resurfacing, but I'm inclined to think more holistically, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So,
Or inclusively.
can I offer my opinion on that?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Pete.
Oh, sorry. Sorry to cut you off, Bird. So I brought this up, but everybody seemed to have kind of, I didn't say we forgot, but we just haven't thought about it. We have a playground in the Volunteers Green that is in absolute horrible shape. I've straightened that thing and redug it and reset it at least 8 times since I've worked for this town. We've talked about relocating to that upper level. What I'm getting at is I think it should be some kind of reserve account in recreation, and that should cover Brown's Court, pickleball, cover Volunteers Green, playground equipment, just some kind of reserve in there. So that's going to be something that's coming down the pike pretty quick. And the discussions, kind of dropped off about, replacing that whole playground, but it's vital to this community, and it's used completely year round. So, that's going to surface. So I just want to throw it out there.
So it would seem to me that we want to come back with something. What would that look like, and how much would we want to put into it if we think, as Pete described, more inclusively, but with specific ideas, like the playground equipment.
Well, the reasonable scope and then what's a
Yeah.
reasonable funding,
Yeah,
but not narrowing it to just specifically pickleball. I mean, just
or the playground.
very, like
Yeah.
you said, very granular. We could end up with hundreds of reserves when they could be combined.
No, actually, what we can do is exactly what we did with Conservation Commission. You guys would make a motion to, what's the word I'm looking for, hold it aside. So where we typically would have a fund balance, then we would have another fund balance that could be pickleball. And that's where you guys make a motion saying we want to take, what word am I looking for, Josh? We want to take this much money and commit it to this thing. So it may be the playground, it may be pickleball, and then each year you could make the motion to, okay, well, now we have 200,000 left in the special projects. We're going to commit this much to the next round to be used by a certain time. We did that with Conservation Commission with Gillette Pond, I think.
And that's like how much was that project?
Couple hundred?
Gillette Pond, I think we had at least 150, if not, do we have 300,000?
It seems like the $12,000 amount's like not worthy of its own reserve.
Yeah,
Right.
So if we could do that within like a Parks and Recreation reserve, we could earmark a certain amount for pickleball. But like we would need a reserve to put that in because we don't really have one that exists at the moment, do we?
We have
well,
And
we have this,
Restriction and Trails.
well, we have the special projects reserve, which is the ARPA money.
Right.
Which
We
is
don't,
kind of-
we don't have a recreation reserve other than that.
Yeah.
But that,
We have tennis.
we do have the $300 in tennis.
What if we rename it pickle tennis and then we can?
Well, I'm being glib, but seriously, that's an example. Like if we put it in recreation, and we're not going to do anything for tennis courts or, I mean, you get a tennis racket for $300, but
Maybe.
I think we should be thinking again more globally and then be coming up with
Yeah.
the specific expenses. And there's probably not a given year where it's like, oh my gosh, we can't play pickleball this year. There's a planned
Dingier and dingier until.
replacement, but you know, it's probably plus or minus a couple of years. I'm just guessing. Sort of like the backstops or grading or
Water
the
system.
playground equipment.
Yeah, it all falls under recreation. So I think, you know, you can earmark out of that recreation reserve for specific things, but those two properties are completely used by the town for recreation. So, you know, to me, it makes sense to have something there. Especially when we know now we have a pickleball court and we know we have a playground problem and we know we have backstops that need repair. We know we have a concession stand that's been, you know, flooded 100 times. I mean, it's always
Yeah.
going to be something. So, you know, and the park, just the park itself. So we might want to do some stuff there. So, anyways.
So I have a suggestion. I sort of amending what we just decided about, put all the reserves into highway. What if we start by just putting 5 or 10 into a recreation reserve fund and get it started?
Establish it.
Do we have to put that on the ballot to be voted on to create a restricted fund?
I'm not saying restricted,
Reserve.
a reserve.
I don't know if we can,
You
it
mean-
would have to be restricted
Let's
to
ask-
recreation.
Yeah, I mean, let's ask the auditors. At one point, I was under the impression that you could make a select board created reserve, but it could be changed by a future select board.
So if you want to lock it in and
I think
eliminate
that's
the
the
ability
rule.
for future select boards to spend it on other things, then you would need to create on the ballot.
Yeah, but let's double check with the auditors to see if the select board can create a reserve. I think they can, but I got a little mixed up on that when we created the special projects reserve,
Yep.
which we had to make sure was created by the voters. I think we were trying to do that because of where the money was coming from. So, but it's a good question. Let's just double check with the auditors to see if the board can make it. The simple thing would be you guys make the reserve and we go from there.
I
It
don't
just
want to
wouldn't-
end up with $300 in a tennis fund.
I don't either.
So, and I want to be stuck in recreation if like something burns down and we need money to like deal with that. I just want to be thoughtful and Pete described several examples of that. I think it's prudent, but if like we hit a crisis, I don't want to say, oh, we can't touch that money.
Right. Also, the existence of reserve, restricted or not, does indicate to people in the future that there was a need established and that, they would explore why that was created and why it was funded and how much.
And department heads will be able to talk about it like, oh, we put it in there for these reasons. Here's what we ought to think about for expenditures.
Yeah.
So you want to look at it more than just being able to borrow from it. You want to be able to say, yep, we're taking that money and not paying it back because we need to do something else with it.
Yeah, I want flexibility.
All right, let's ask those questions because I don't
Yeah,
know exactly what the options are there, but I think if the select board creates it, you do have more flexibility, but I'd like to get a professional opinion to make sure that we're doing it right.
Very reasonable.
I think what it is like Josh, you or I can create a reserve, but it's just, or excuse me, not a reserve, a fund.
Yeah. Call it a fund.
Like if we got money from something, we could
Yeah.
create a fund.
Right.
And that would be just to help us track things. Whereas when you guys get together and say, create this reserve, it's restricted, but restricted by the select board, meaning anybody using it needs your permission on a
Right.
PO or whatever, the approval to use it.
So can we create a fund where it's restricted, where we need our approval, but what it could be used for is not restricted as long as they get approval?
A reserve is still a fund. It's a separate fund, but it would be restricted
wanna
in the
create a
sense that
reserve.
you guys would have to okay the use of it.
If it was for like a flood recovery instead of a, yeah, let's just
Right.
double check with the auditors. I
Yep.
think
We
that
just
was,
don't want to be locked into like
Yeah.
purely whatever the description of the reserve is at some point.
that's it. And I think because I remember that when we were with Sullivan and Powers, they talked about select board created reserves and voter created reserves, and there was different flexibility, more flexibility in select board created. So we'll find that answer out. There shouldn't be a hard one for them to tell us.
And my thesis is put at least a nominal sum in it in this budget to get it started.
So I figured like we'll put 10,000 into that, the rest into the bridge and culvert to get up to about a 4% increase. We'll look at the future years for the contributions to the bridge and culvert reserve. And then we'll have that for you hopefully next Monday.
That makes sense to the rest of you? Caitlin, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I guess once Bard talks
Yeah.
about the park and the volunteers green eating, or not, sorry, Pete talking about that too. I mean, $10,000 seems like a big amount of a pickleball resurfacing, and when you expand it to recreation and parks, drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Caitlin, do you like that? I think you nodded.
Yeah, I tried to press unmute and I clicked on the screen behind it and then yes, I'm good.
Anything else we should go over, Josh?
I'm good.
Bonnie?
Thanks, that's enough.
We're good.
So the plan is we'll offer
I have a
the
motion.
next select board meeting,
Yeah,
and then the next meeting is in January.
January
for
6th.
public input.
Yeah, so we'll come back to the next meeting. It shouldn't be that much to get that and then do a 5-minute update at the next meeting, and then January 6th will be the full meeting.
Great. Cool.
All right.
Now I move. Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
We were adjourned. Aye. We were adjourned.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
y'all. Thanks for doing this. I'm
All right.
again impressed by the
Because now we got another item.
level of detail and complexity of these spreadsheets and workbooks and tabs, like,
Yeah, Wednesdays.
I reach a point that it's like, yeah. I can't
So let me see.
stop.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
oh, I totally get it.
Tomorrow
In my career, when I did that, it's like, okay, I have the ideas, let me go away and come back. So,
At noonish, I
yeah.
rarely do.
And it often took looking at things a couple of times to do more to.
The capital
I can do any time today.
way.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Do like.
Know what they need,
I'm usually in by like 7:45.
So we gotta put the kids in the
That's
bus, so I won't be
Caitlin,
here before 7:45, 8 o'clock anyway.
So then perfect. Just come on over and if my drop off goes smooth tomorrow, I should be in by 7:45. Bonnie will meet a little bit later tomorrow morning. I want to meet with them in the morning. We'll do our meeting a little after 8 tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And I'm going to meet with Adam for select board and then I'll jump in with our Tuesday meeting. Cool. And work awesome. Thank you. And then thank you, everybody from staff for being here. I should have said that
Yes.
before everybody logged off.
Thanks for
Thank you all for
coming
making time. I
and
know we
sitting
didn't have
through it.
Questions, but thanks for being here.